The sun burned softly above Cheve International Schools the morning Madame Oluchi first stepped through the tall black iron gates. From a distance, she looked like a middle-aged woman from the village. Her faded wrapper hugging her wide hips, her slippers flapping against the dusty ground. A small battered Ghana must go back balanced on her arm. Yet something about her steps, slow, steady, and as if she counted each footprint, caught the eyes of the gatekeeper. He paused, mid-yawn, staring as the woman lifted her head and gave him a smile so gentle that he dropped his guard. "Good morning, my son," she greeted. "Good morning, ma." "Who you dey find?" the gatekeeper asked, confused. She lifted her hand, revealing a letter. The gatekeeper squinted at the neat signature at the bottom, Principal Adeboyega. The letter gave her permission to start work immediately. Madam Oluchi, cook. Just one line, stamped with the school's proud purple seal. He pointed her toward the main building, a tall structure, painted cream and purple. The school compound stretched like a small kingdom, neat lawns, trimmed hedges, teachers' cars parked in row, hostel blocks behind high walls. Everything about Cheve International Schools spoke of wealth, prestige, and discipline. Students in their crisp purple uniforms hurried to morning assembly in lines, their shoes polished enough to blind the sun. At the assembly ground, the air hummed with hundreds of voices reciting national anthem, then the school anthem, a proud tone about rising like the eagle soaring above the storm. Mr. Adeboyega, a stout man in a dark suit and glasses, stepped up to the microphone. "Good morning, students," he boomed. "Good morning, sir," the students chorused, voices echoing. Mr. Adeboyega cleared his throat and gestured to the side. Two prefects stepped aside to reveal Madame Oluchi standing quietly by the stage. Up close, one could see the small beads of sweat on her forehead, the gentle way she pressed her palm against her chest as if to calm her heart. "This is Madame Oluchi," the principal said, his tone official but warm. "She will be serving as our new cook in the school cafeteria, especially for our boarding students." A polite round of applause. Some students looked at each other and shrugged. A new cook was not worth missing breakfast for. But a few, especially the girls at the front row, giggled at the way Madame Oluchi smiled, her eyes crinkling at the corners like an old mother's. After the assembly, she was led through the back corridors to the huge kitchen behind the dining hall. There she met the other kitchen staff, 3 assistants and the old storekeeper. She nodded at them, her smile never leaving her lips. "Where do I start?" she asked softly. By afternoon, the scent of palm oil and fresh spices drifted from the kitchen. Students lined up with their trays, sniffing the air like hungry cats. By the time the first spoonful of her jollof rice touched their tongues, a quiet wave of wonder spread through the dining hall. "Chai, who cooked this rice?" one boy whispered to his table mate. "Oluchi," another replied with a grim mouth full. "God bless that woman," they said in unison. That evening, the hostel corridors buzzed with the chatter about the new cook. Some juniors sneaked leftover rice in their lunch boxes, licking their spoons in secret. It did not take long for Madame Oluchi to become a household name at Cheve International Schools. By the second week, students no longer dragged their feet to the dining hall. They ran. Plates clattered, trays overflowed, spoons scraped steel plates clean. Word spread beyond the hostels. Even day students began to linger during break time just to test the hostel menu. The teachers started to notice too. Mrs. Odile, the senior matron, watched from the serving point as Oluchi ladled steaming pepper soup into the seniors' bowl. It smelled of fresh scent leaves, a subtle twist of ginger, a taste so familiar yet enchanting. One Sunday evening, the cafeteria was supposed to close by 7 p.m. By 8, a long line still coiled outside. Some boys pleaded for a second helping of Oluchi's special coconut rice. She laughed softly, her gold tooth glinting under the kitchen lights. "My children, food must finish so you can look forward to tomorrow," she teased. They all laughed back. By the third week, Oluchi's food had become more than food. It was comfort. Juniors whispered, "She must have some magic ingredients." Seniors bragged about sneaking into the kitchen at dawn to beg for meat from the soup pot. The PTA, hearing the praise, congratulated Mr. Adeboyega for finding such a motherly cook. But late at night, when Oluchi washed the last pot, she would touch her forehead and whisper softly, "Let them hunger for this. Let them forget what they came here for." A month later, the teachers began to see it first. Night prep became an uphill battle. SS3 students, usually the most serious, dozed off as soon as they opened their textbooks. Teachers had to knock on desks to wake them. Some dozed so deeply they drooled onto their notebooks. At first, it was funny. "It's exam stress," the staff murmured. "Let them rest." But when even the best students, the stars of spelling bees, science competitions, began to forget simple equations, the laughter died. Miss Ekaite, the chemistry teacher, nearly burst into tears when her once sharp class failed an impromptu test. The principal called a meeting in the staff room. "Something is wrong with our children," he thundered, slamming his fist on the table. The teachers blamed phones, late-night gossip, laziness, but nobody mentioned Madame Oluchi. After all, how could good food be bad? Meanwhile, the students could not see beyond their plates. They rushed through classes, dreaming of the next meal. Egusi with big lumps of meat, yam porridge so soft it melted on the tongue, fried plantain, sprinkled with something sweet they could never name. Those who dared skip lunch found themselves weak by evening, desperate for a spoonful of tea. Some even lied about being sick just to be served an extra portion in the sick bay. In the girls' dormitories, senior girls whispered about how they would plead for Oluchi's recipe for when they went to university. "So our boyfriends would never leave us," they giggled. Only Munachi watched silently. She saw the way students stumbled into the chapel late for morning devotion, belching the scent of rich stew and falling asleep mid-prayer. One night, she sat up in her top bunk, listening to her roommate snore. She closed her Bible, stared at the ceiling, and whispered, "God, show me what is happening in this school." By midday, the once crowded library was an empty shell. The old librarian, Mr. Hussein, shuffled through dusty shelves each evening, signing at rows of untouched books. For decades, Cheve students had fought for seats in the library. Now the heavy wooden doors creaked open and shut with no footsteps in between. When he asked the students why they no longer came, they shrugged. "We have more homework now, sir," or "We are tired after prep, sir." But Mr. Hussein knew better. He watched them drag their feet from the dining hall, their eyes glazed over as if their thoughts had been swallowed by something too heavy to spit out. One afternoon, he cornered Munachi outside the chapel. "Prefect," he said gently, "what is happening to your mates?" Munachi hesitated. She remembered how even she had gone to the cafeteria that morning for breakfast, thinking she would eat just a little, yet she had taken 2 helpings, licking her spoon so clean it could return to the rack untouched. She touched her lips. "I don't know yet, sir, but I think something is not right." Mr. Hussein patted her shoulder. "Keep your eyes open, child." That night, Munachi lay on her bed with her Bible on her chest. She drifted into sleep, asking God for an answer. And deep in the night, a dream began. In the dream, Munachi stood alone in the school dining hall. The long tables were gone. Instead, the floor was littered with torn scraps of paper. She bent down to pick one. It read failure. She picked another, laziness. Another, procrastination. The rustling sound made her run. Behind the counter where Madame Oluchi usually stood, the students she knew, bright-eyed boys and girls who once recited Shakespeare's and solved quadratic equations in seconds, now crawled on all fours like animals, picking up the scraps and stuffing them into their mouths. They chewed and chewed. No one looked at her. She giggled. Others wept as they swallowed. She screamed for them to stop, but they only crawled faster. A cold hand touched her shoulder. She spun around and found no one. Instead, the walls of the dining hall dripped with dark stew. She woke up, gasping for breath, her palms clammy. Her roommates were snoring. The hostel was silent, except for the chimp of night incense outside. She pressed her palm together, heart hammering. Lord, what does this mean? When dawn broke, she resolved she could not eat until she understood. By break time, she was on her knees in the chapel. She told no one about the dream, but she did not eat that afternoon nor the next. When the hunger bit into her stomach, she bit harder into her prayers. By the third day, she had lost strength but gained something sharper, an alertness to every whisper, every flicker of shadow around Madame Oluchi's kitchen. On the sixth night, Munachi's body trembled with exhaustion as she called on the chapel pew. Her fast was almost over, but no clear answer had come. She drifted again into uneasy sleep. This time, she saw herself in the kitchen. The big pot bubbled on iron stand, but one pot, smaller than the rest, glowed with a strange green flame beneath it. Madame Oluchi stood in front of it, her faded wrapper stained with palm oil, her hair tied back. Her lips moved quickly, almost too fast to catch. Munachi leaned closer. She could not hear the words at first. Then Oluchi lifted her hands over the pot, dropped what looked like a torn piece of notebook paper into the stew, and whispered, "They will continue to fail until no less anger exists. Let them remain blind. Let them remain weak until my soul finds its balance." Munachi felt her heart split open in fear. She stumbled backward, tripping over the cold kitchen floor. But when she looked down, she saw her feet sinking into the same stew that bubbled in the pot. She screamed and screamed and woke up in the chapel, breathless, sweaty, heart hammering. Her Bible lay open beside her. The morning sun was just crawling through the stained glass. In her head, the words echoed, "Until no less anger exists." Munachi knew then that it was time. She could not keep this to herself any longer. She folded her Bible, wiped her face, and rose to go find the principal. Munachi stood before the principal's office door, her fingers trembling around the Bible clutched to her chest. From inside, she heard the low hum of the generator, the ticking of the old wall clock, and the faint murmur of voices. The principal, Mr. Adeboyega, and vice principal, Mrs. Ume, likely arguing about falling grades again. She knocked twice. "Come in," Mr. Adeboyega's deep voice barked. Inside, both administrators looked up in surprise. Munachi's uniform was rumpled, her eyes sunken from nights without sleep or proper meals, but her resolve burned like coals beneath her ribs. "Sir, ma," she began, voice shaking. "I need to speak with you. Please, it's about the students." Mrs. Ume frowned. "Sit down, chapel prefect. You look weak. When did you last eat? Munachi ignored the question. She laid her Bible on the table. She told them everything: the empty library, the sleeping students, the haunting dreams, the scraps of paper, Madam Oluchi's whispered words, the pause that seemed alive with something unholy. At first, Mr. Adeboyega leaned back, disbelief written on every crease of his forehead. But as Munachi spoke, he exchanged a troubled glance with Mrs. Ume. This is a spiritual matter, Munachi said, and we have been blind. Silence hung between them like thick smoke. The principal's eyes dropped to the desk, where dusty files of disciplinary reports and plunging grades lay untouched. Finally, Mrs. Ume spoke softly. What do you want us to do, child? Munachi took a breath. We must pray, all of us, staff, students. A fast, a deliverance, or this school will sink deeper. Mr. Adeboyega rubbed his face with his palm. A fast? In a boarding school? Parents will complain. Parents are already complaining, Munachi said, her voice firmer than she felt. We have to fight this or Cheve International will be a shell. The principal sat back, exhaling heavily. God, help us then. We will call a staff meeting tonight. You will lead the prayers. Munachi bowed her head, tears pricking her eyes. Thank you, sir. When she rose to leave, the principal's voice stopped her. Munachi, are you sure you're ready for this? She turned, her eyes like flint. Sir, it's not about me anymore. By dawn the next day, a circular went out. All students and staff are to gather at the assembly ground at 7 a.m. Bring your Bibles. The school is declaring a 2-day fast and deliverance section. Dining hall will be closed. No food will be served for 2 days. The news spread like wildfire. Some students gambled in secret corners. They want to starve us now. But the older ones, the few who will remember Cheve's old glory, knew something serious must have pushed the principal this far. Madam Oluchi heard too. She stood in her kitchen doorway, apron tied neatly, eyes narrowed as she watched the students shuffle past her locked kitchen. She hissed softly, ungrateful children. By 7 a.m., over 500 students stood barefoot at the assembly ground, facing the staff who looked as bewildered as they were. Some teachers whispered among themselves, fasting for children? How would they cope? Munachi took the microphone. Her hands trembled as she looked over the sea of faces. Sleepy boys in rumpled uniforms, girls hugging shawls against the morning chill. Today, we are fighting for our minds, for our destiny, for the school's name. We will pray until heaven listens. And so they prayed. Under the hot sun, under the gathering clouds, they prayed. Some mocked at first, juniors giggled, seniors rolled their eyes. But as the hours wore on, a strange heaviness began to lift. By nightfall, the students gathered again by torchlight. Kneeling on the cold concrete, some wept openly as Munachi's voice rose into the dark sky. Inside her kitchen, Oluchi sat before her small pot, the green flame flickering beneath it. She stared and stared, her lips moving in words only the walls heard. But beyond the walls, voices were rising, tearing through her incantations like clouds on thin cloth. The second day dawned restless. Students, hungry yet strangely awake, gathered on the assembly ground again. Some who had mocked now pressed their palms together, chanting prayers. Teachers who once coughed knelt in dusty trousers beside their students. Munachi's voice cracked from hours of shouting psalms. Her throat burned, but her spirit swelled. She felt it, the breaking. The chains, invisible yet thick, snapping one by one. In the middle of a chorus of prayers, a sharp cry rang out. A junior girl collapsed, twitching. Two boys screamed and ran. Panic rippled through the crowd. But Munachi did not flinch. She grabbed her Bible, pressed it to the girl's forehead, and prayed harder. Then a strange hush fell. Out of nowhere, Madame Oluchi appeared, still in her oil-stained apron, her headscarf tied tight. She pushed through the kneeling students, her eyes wild. "Stop!" she shrieked. The chantings tumbled to silence. Teachers stared in shock. Oluchi's voice rang over the frozen assembly. "Stop these useless prayers, you fools! You are not worthy to alter his name." Her words boomed. Mr. Adeboyega stepped forward, his lips trembling. "Madam Oluchi, what is this?" Oluchi laughed. A dry, broken sound. "You want deliverance? After what you did to me? After what you covered up so easily?" Murmurs spread like wildfire. Students looked at each other, confusion tangled with fear. Munachi rose slowly, her voice shook. "What did we do to you?" Oluchi's eyes glowed with a rage that chilled the warm, damp air. "You killed me." A heavy silence fell on the assembly ground. Even the restless city wind seemed to pause. "You killed me," Oluchi said again, her voice softer now but sharper than a blade. "You all, your precious Cheve International Schools, your champions of tomorrow." She pointed at the principal. "You, Adeboyega, you were a junior teacher then. You knew. You signed the papers." Mr. Adeboyega's mouth moved, but no words came. Etrimo shook his hand. Oluchi turned to the students. "I was just like you once. Best in class, best in debate, first girl to represent this school in the regional spelling bee. But envy is poison and the evil grows where pride lives." Her voice cracked. "One night, they cornered me behind the science lab. Girls I called friends. They said I was too proud, too smart. They beat me, mocked me, pushed me till my head cracked against a concrete block." She lifted her wrapper's hem and revealed a faded scar snaking across her temple. "They left me there. The school covered it up and said I fell. Paid my parents hush money. They buried me quick. No fuse. Cheve International School won their case. Their good name stayed clean." Gasps rippled through the rows of kneeling students. Some teachers wept openly. Munachi stepped forward, tears in her eyes. "Why did you come back? Why cook for us?" Oluchi's lips curled into a bitter smile. "So you will taste what you stole. Potential turned rotten in the belly. You feasted on my future. I made sure you would feed on your own failure." She spread her arms wide, the morning sun glinting off the tears on her cheeks. "I only asked for justice, but they buried me with lies, so I rose with anger. No one spoke, no one moved." Munachi lowered her head, whispering a prayer. "God, give us mercy and truth." Above the stunned silence, the school bell tolled long, hollow, mourning the secret that now refused to stay buried. The assembly ground lay silent, heavy with the ghost of Oluchi's confession. Teachers whispered among themselves, some clutching their rosaries like shells. Students shifted restlessly, some in tears, others glaring at the school officials who had so long paraded as guardians of truth. Mr. Adeboyega tried to speak, but the microphone crackled uselessly in his shaking hands. Munachi, her eyes tongue red, stepped forward again. She turned to Oluchi, whose shoulder rose and fell with ragged breath. "Madam Oluchi, what do you want now?" Oluchi's eyes burned. "Justice, not your pity prayers. I want every child of those who did this to me brought here. Let the world see them. Let them carry what I carried on the ground." She turned, pointing a thin finger at the principal. "Bring them back. You know them. You know where they sit in power now. If this is what it will take, we will call them. We will bring them here. A ripple of disbelief spread through the students. Those girls, the ones who ended Oluchi's life. Somewhere in the back, a boy whispered to his friend, "My mother always said our sins wait for us like shadows at dusk." Munachi turned back to the students. We must not fear this truth. If we want our future back, the past must stand trial. The sun rose higher. Rumors spread through the hostels like dry harmattan wind. Phones buzzed. Parents called. Teachers who once boasted of the school's spotless name began to pack their files, fear flickering in their eyes. The next day, journalists camped at the school gates. Parents who once bragged about their children's admission now stormed the principal's office demanding answers. The Board of Governors sat in an emergency session, faces pale, robes clinging to sweat-soaked necks. Letters were sent out under police escort, summons with names that dripped with irony. Barrister Chidinma Iwu, Honorable Amaka Ofodile, Chief Magistrate Grace Nwachukwu, Madam Nnenna Ude, all former students, all alumni who wore the badge of Chef's pride. One by one, black SUVs rolled into the school compound days later. Women dressed in expensive lace and high heels stepped out, faces painted, diamonds winking in the sun. But under the camera light, their smiles cracked. Students watched from dorm windows, whispering, "So these are the mothers who once walked these corridors, who once called Oluchi's sister before they made her silence." At the assembly hall, the entire school sat, squeezed shoulder to shoulder. The air was thick with secrets, sweat and prayers muttered under breath. Munachi watched them file in. These champions now dragged by truth to kneel before the children of the same school they once worshipped. Madam Oluchi waited at the back, her arms crossed. She did not smile, her eyes glowed with something that looked like sorrow, or maybe relief. When the women were seated, the hall fell into a hush, so deep that the rustling leaves outside sounded like drums. A government prosecutor stepped forward, voice echoing through the hall like thunder. He read the charges. Manslaughter, conspiracy, cover-up. Some women protested, eyes wide in fake innocence. Others broke down, sobbing, smudging expensive makeup with shaking hands. Chief Magistrate Grace Nwachukwu stood shakily. "It was a mistake, we were just children." Oluchi's laugh cut through the silence like a whip crack. "So I was a child, but I never got the chance to grow up, you did." The hall rippled with murmurs, students shifting, teachers weeping quietly in the corners. A few teachers who signed the old files were dragged out too. Some were retired, but they came. Munachi took the microphone. Her voice cracked with power beyond her years. Cheve International Schools once taught us that truth matters more than wealth, but we forgot. Today, the truth has remembered us. She turned to the students. "You see now, lies always rot the house they hid in. Let this be your lesson." No one dared speak. Even the wind outside seemed to hold its breath. The court sat under the old fig tree by the staff quarters. A makeshift bench of shame for women who once dined with kings, parents and journalists crowded the fence, recording every word. When the prosecutor finished reading the witness statements, Madam Oluchi stepped forward for the last time. She looked frail, her plan spent. Her revenge spoken for by every trembling lip. She faced Munachi, who stood bravely at the front. "Child, your prayers broke the pot, not the fasting alone, but your courage to face the truth." Munachi's eyes filled with tears. "Will you forgive us now?" Oluchi's eyes glistened. She shook her head, then nodded, as if debating with the air. "I forgive you, not them. The law must judge them." but the curse is lifted from this soil. Let the children live. And with that, she collapsed. Teachers rushed to her side, but all they found was a shallow breath that faded like a candle flickering out. Madame Oluchi's eyes fluttered shut. A faint smile curved her cracked lips. A peace decades too late, yet finally real. Above the tree, the sun broke through a dark cluster of clouds. A single beam fell on her still face. The students wept openly. The old ones bowed their heads. Chef's hidden ghost had spoken, and the school would never hide any other shadow again. Weeks later, the trial concluded. Headlines screamed, former students jailed for murder of classmates. Cheve International fined for conspiracy. Principal removed. Parents pulled their children close, whispering the tale at dinner tables. Always remember, no lie buried stayed buried forever. The new principal, a humble man of faith, invited Munachi to address the whole school at her final assembly before graduation. She stood on the same stage where Oluchi once cooked secrets into stew and poison into soup. Our books are open again, Munachi said, her voice steady. Our library is full. Our night prayers are alive. We still feed our minds now, not our fears. A hush settled in the front now. New students watched her with bright eyes. The seeds of a new story. She glanced toward the kitchen block, now padlocked and quiet. She whispered, "Rest well, Madame Oluchi. May your name remind us to never silence the truth again." As the assembly rose in song, the wind picked up, soft, warm, carrying the echo of a woman whose stolen life had returned to teach them all. A lie may hide for a season, but truth is the meal that never stops cooking.